Should you invest in fixed maturity plans? That's the topic of discussion in today's Investors Hangout, brought to you by Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund and Value Research. To answer all the questions that I have is the CEO of Value Research, Dhirendra Kumar. Dhirendra, we welcome you.
Thank you.
My first question. FMPs don't usually come into the limelight with the AUM of roughly about 1 trillion. They're quite popular amongst the investors. But what is actually the FMPs, if you were to define it?
It's a fund, and it's a closed-end fund. And it is a closed-end fund which invests only in fixed income securities. And it is a closed-end fund with a term. That is how closed-end funds are, that they open, a new fund is launched, people invest money, they invest money with a time frame because it has a term. It's normally above 3 years. So FMPs are able to give you a slightly more predictable return, because if you launch a closed-end fund which invests only in fixed income securities, then the fund manager will buy bonds of that maturity. And the yield on those maturity, the return on those maturity is fairly predictable. And they are insulated from the interest rate risk. What happens typically in a bond fund is that when interest rates go up, the bond prices fall. And when interest rates go down, bond prices go up. And that is bad so that leads to the unpredictability. And when this happens, whenever there's a change in the outlook of fixed income, the interest rate, then investors act. Investors pull out money if interest rates are going up. Investors invest money if interest rates are likely to go down. And that creates a lot of flux. That creates a lot of, uncertainty. And fund managers are forced to act. In this case, fund companies raise money for a predictable time frame, and they are able to deliver predictable return. And it is meant for fixed, risk-averse investors, the bank depositors. They are also the advantage of FMP is that they are able to give you predictable return, unlike an open-ended fund. They are also able to give you slightly higher return. It is also more tax efficient because 3-year time frame. Interest from bank deposit is taxable. If you invest in an open-end fund, the returns could be variable, could be volatile. In this case, because of the time frame, you are able to do the indexation.
So it's like a lock-in period.
It is a lock-in period. Okay. It is a lock-in period, and there is no way you can actually take the money out. So it is low on liquidity. If you are likely to need the money in between, then FMP may not be for you.
So as you said, it reduces the risk of interest rate volatility.
Yes.
So that's a big plus.
That's a big plus, because if an investor, because that interest rate volatility is not unreal. It is not that if you are an investor in an open-end fund, it is not that if you stay invested you will get the return, because other investors will act, because other investors will pull out if interest rates go up, because other investors will put more money if interest rates go down. So your return gets affected even if you are a long-term investor. So if you are looking for predictable return, also because predictable return, FMPs are great. Another thing which is a plus for FMP is that because the fund manager is taking a defined call that in 3.5 years he must get his interest and principal back, so he's able to take he's able to take a view. And in between, whatever happens, even if NAV goes down, it doesn't matter to the investor, because at the end he will get that much money because other investors will not be working. And because of this time frame, fund managers are able to take a credit call, which sometimes enhances return.
So what I've understood is that the returns are still indicative. It is not guaranteed.
Oh, of course not. No mutual fund offers you a guaranteed return.
Right.
It is just that it is indicative. If the fund is going to invest in 3.5-year corporate bond, you know that what these bonds are yielding. Then you know that what the expense of this fund will be.
Okay.
So you could be so you can actually predict it, and your prediction will be right, because there is not much of a. Of course, there could be a. There is only one possibility that some credit blows up. The fund invests in a bond and doesn't get the principal or interest on time. In that case, the fund will take a hit. but most funds are able to mitigate that risk with diversification.
Okay.
And not too many FMPs have faced this problem.
How would you compare them to the bank fixed deposits?
More tax efficient, less liquid.
Okay, fine. There must be some negatives also?
Yeah, less liquid, because
Less
you can't
liquid,
take,
okay.
because bank fixed deposit, you can always take a premature encashment.
And there's hardly any volume to trade also.
FMPs don't trade.
Don't.
They are technically supposed to get listed, but they don't trade. So you have to compromise on liquidity. If you want the money, there is a small chance that you need the money in between. FMPs may not be for you.
So are there a viable solution for investors who are suffering from falling yields, as you said, on the bank FDs? So
They are interesting option. They are useful option for investors looking for risk averse investors, who don't want to take any market risk, who also don't want to take any big credit risk, or the interest rate risk. That apart, you want marginally higher return, but these funds are, even FMPs are not good enough to combat inflation. They will give you little more return than bank deposit. They will also give you more tax efficient return. And it comes with a compromise on liquidity. But that apart, it is not in a position to beat the fixed income, beat the inflation by a wide margin so that your money grows in real terms. No, it will be marginally higher.
Okay. So my next question is that, if I'm an investor, so what kind of an investor would you define who should take up the FMPs?
Very conservative investors, who don't want to see their principal go down in value. The investors who are, bank depositors, and they don't want to, they are not prepared for any assumption of any risk. It is meant only for them.
Okay. So is there anything in particular that an investor should see before buying? Are there any do's and don'ts to it?
One is that you really can't see, because in FMPs, because they are closed-end funds, so when you invest in a fund, the fund does not have, it is not carrying a portfolio. Unlike an open-end fund, that that your money is getting invested in a fund which looks like this. This is only a promise that it will look more like this. So only one, investors should look at two things: how the FMPs of the fund company has done in the past, their track record of the previous one, because you can never invest in a FMP with a track record. They are closed-end, they start, and you have to invest at the outset. And the other thing is that what is the stated policy of going down the credit quality? Is the fund saying that it will invest a lot of money in lower rated credits, lower rated bonds? If that is so, avoid those. Don't assume, don't put your principal at stake for marginally higher return. That is, you err on the side of caution. So just be a little careful. Don't choose a fund, don't choose an FMP which has a stated policy of investing a substantially large amount in lower rated, bonds with lower credit rating.
So it's important that they have the scheme info document. They must read that carefully.
They read that carefully and look at that policy.
Okay. So invest in FMPs if you want higher returns, if you want tax efficient fund, tax efficiency.
Tax efficiency, because, lower taxation.
However, keep in mind that they are low on liquidity and there is hardly any volume to trade. We now move on to our next section, which is the Q&A part of our program. The first question is from Pradyot, and he's asking, what are the chances of investment turning bad under the FMP? Is there a way to protect the possible outcome by factoring in past experience or track record? If you heard it, I think they didn't mention it, but
yes, again, look at the track record. That is all that you have, and look at the track record of older FMPs. And they're very small chance, because FMP, they will be investing, they invest in bonds. They invest in bond with a certain time frame, and it is basically a buy and hold strategy. The moment the FMP gets the money from investors, it invests, it buys bonds and holds it till the maturity. So just look at the past track record, look at the credit policy, the credit rating, the investment policy in terms of how low can they get in terms of rating profile. That apart, assuming it happens, it can't be ruled out. In case of economic downturn, we know that companies are stressed. We know that Indian banking system is plagued with the non-performing asset of large companies. But mutual funds so far have been able to keep themselves away from that. They work almost like a very conservative lender, and they keep a margin, they keep collateral, and then invest in those bonds. So, but still, the biggest advantage of FMP is that my understanding is that most open-end fund, when they face with a credit problem, when they face with a situation that they own a bond and they have a bond which, assuming that bond is 2% of the portfolio, assuming it's a 100 crore fund and 2 crore goes bad, because of the 2 crore going bad, a lot of investors pull their money out. So investors' action turn out to be the biggest threat to open-end fund.
Okay.
In case of FMP, that problem is that possibility is ruled out, because investors are stuck for the time frame. So even if the fund, two things happen. One is that investors can't pull out the money and they will not put the fund in jeopardy. They will not jeopardize the fund manager's fund's portfolio.
Nor can you top up.
Nor
can you add anything.
You can't invest even. So assuming that a 100 crore FMP faces a 2 crore credit issue, so 2 crore goes down. So one is that it's a small part. All funds are diversified portfolio. Investors can't take out, and the fund also gets time to get it, because many a times these credit issues, they get resolved in certain time frame. The company will say that, okay, we are facing a problem, but in 8 months time we will pay you half the money, and things get negotiated. So the FMP might get a time, so they will get a NAV hit in the interim.
Okay.
Because the mutual fund valuation policy is such that those FMPs, we will see that the NAV will decline, but those NAVs are notional because you can't take the money out. So FMPs provide you these two comfort, likelihood of recovery, and in case of open-end fund, it becomes a problem because other investors pull out and the fund is forced to sell, has to put the NAV lower, and investors can take that money out, or some investors will try and time their entry into that if they are likely to benefit from that. So all those things are, FMPs are insulated from it.
Okay. How are returns from debt funds related to the interest rate? Asks Naveen.
Oh, it's a basic question, and this is something which all fixed depositors are surprised to hear. When interest rates go up, then bond prices fall. Bond prices fall because if you invest new money in a new bond, fresh money in a new bond, then it will yield higher return. So older bonds are priced lower to match with the higher return which prevails in the economic system. So interest rates, so there is an inverse relationship. Interest rates go up, bond prices fall, and when bond prices fall, bond funds also fall because they own those bonds, and the reverse is as true. Interest rates go down, these bond prices go up, and so open-end bond fund benefits when interest rates go down. But this is a short-term thing. Bond funds have two things. One is that you do the discounting of all the future cash flow that will happen to that portfolio. So it's very predictable. It is very arithmetic. Bonds are not like equity. Bonds are three things: how good it is, how much interest it is paying, and what is the term. These three things actually fit into a formula, and that determines the valuation. So when interest rates go up or go down, the bond prices change in a fairly arithmetic, predictable fashion.
Okay. DP Singh says, is it not better to invest in open-ended income fund than putting the money in FMP, as the money is locked for a fixed period and the return is almost the same in both cases?
It depends which kind of fund. And I would think that some FMPs are able to deliver you more return, little more return than because if you want predictable return, FMPs are the way to go. And if you don't have a need for liquidity, if there is a small chance that you are likely to need the money, don't go for an FMP. I think FMPs will, short-term bond fund or ultra short-term bond fund or liquid funds may not deliver as much return as FMP on a 3-year period.
Okay. Mr. Banerjee says, I'm a retired person and hold my corpus in a mix of aggressive, hybrid and liquid funds. Liquid funds generally take care of my next 1 year expenses. Should I transfer a part of my corpus from aggressive hybrid funds to an FMP?
No. Simply because, because of the need. Not that FMPs are bad, just that, his need is
correct
for current 1 year income. For 1 year income need, you have no specific advantage, and having that liquidity handy, ability to get the money anytime at 24-hour notice in a liquid fund is a great thing. So, and more so as you depend on it for your regular income and expense needs.
Okay. But can you still not park some of the funds in?
No, FMPs actually score very well when you hold it for 3 years post-tax.
Yeah, you can withdraw. So.
You can't even withdraw, and his need is income. So FMP is ruled out for him.
Okay. Pulkit says, is it advisable to invest in an FMP with the duration of less than 1 year? I think we just answered it.
It does, it doesn't make sense. And 1 year, I really do wonder that FMP will be able to give you any meaningful differential higher return.
Okay. Arun says, I'm 44 years old and have quit my regular job 2 years back. I'm now working on a freelance basis. Should I withdraw my PF amount and invest it in mutual funds, as the interest on my mutual fund amount is now taxable?
Depends on how much is.
A lot of people must be going through what
yes,
Arun is.
Yes, what we are. A lot of people are reconciling with losing job or becoming freelancers. But depends. What is the interest income? Depends on the corpus, and it definitely that is one of the significant advantage of fixed income funds or other funds, that you are not liable to pay taxes, unlike interest, because provident fund or bank deposit, whatever interest accrues, even if you don't take it, you are liable for paying taxes. In case of mutual fund, till you sell it, till you realize the gains, you are not liable to pay tax. So mutual funds turn out to be a great way of deferring taxes, and as you defer taxes, even the return keeps earning, so the accumulation is higher. So I would say yes, it might be a wise thing. Beating the provident fund return on a post-tax, because if it is taxable, is not very difficult. But do some planning. How much money you are likely to need, or create your emergency fund, as you are a freelancer now. So put that money in a ultra short-term bond fund. Rest of the money, start taking some chances. Don't invest in anything linked with equity at one go. So maybe equity savings fund which has 15, 20, 30% into equity. Spread that money over the next 12 months. Do some planning, take the market exposure, and enhance your return in a more tax efficient manner.
Okay. What are the floater debt funds? Is there any advantage of investing in them? And this is asked by Naveen.
Yeah, this is an unnecessary innovation created by the mutual fund industry. You can do without them, because and it's not meant for common investors, because our needs are pretty simple: money for liquid fund, ultra short-term bond fund, or short-term bond fund, and rest of the things avoid. FMP for a predictable time frame, for predictable return, with compromise on liquidity. So I think these 3-4 funds fulfill most of the needs. Floater funds, there are 16 kind of debt funds. You don't have to necessarily invest in all of them.
Okay.
And floater funds, they invest in securities where the interest rate varies. Okay. It changes in line with the interest rate. So we don't have floater instruments. We don't have floating bonds. Because if interest rates go up, then those bond prices, the coupon on those, it changes with changing interest rate. So they are useful, but the underlying security is not there. Because we don't have the underlying security, they are created in an artificial way. And when those are created by an artificial way with way of derivatives, some swaps and other things are created. So it's a financial design which creates the floater instruments artificially, and they are advantageous in a sense that you are if there are real floater funds, then you will be saved from the problem of getting locked into a long maturity, because if interest rates go down and if you are holding higher yielding bonds, then it's great for you, because you will keep earning higher return while interest rates has gone down. But the reverse is as true. When if you are holding an instrument which is yielding 7% and interest rate go up to 9%, you'll keep earning lower return. So floater, what it does is that the coupon, the interest on those floating fund bonds, they get revised. Hard to we don't have very effective mechanism. Work on in a more predictable manner. Don't take those chances. I have seen that every time fixed income investor, particularly in India, where most people are used to still trying their hands at mutual fund, when they are faced with a decline in value in a bond fund, they're very upset, and they're they're way too disappointed. Don't get disappointed. Keep it simple. Liquid fund, ultra short-term bond fund, short-term bond fund, and FMPs. That should be the vehicle for common investors. Rest of the things avoid.
Okay, a lot of investors, the data has been coming in there and are going in for savings, and especially in mutual funds these days. So what would you advise that these floater debt fund kinds of funds one should avoid and stick to the simple funds based on the requirement and ability to invest in the number of years? What would you advise to the new investors?
They need to really, 2-3 things which comes to my mind. One is that you should invest even if you're getting started. Don't invest because you are looking at a TV campaign. Understand a little bit. And understanding your own need is much more important than understanding the mutual funds or how things work. Of course, if you understand a little bit more about how things actually work, it will benefit you. It will help you in terms of doing the right things, and not only that, when things look a little hazy, you will be carrying on with your plan with greater confidence. Okay. So in that sense, understanding a little bit helps, but keeping it simple, that should be the underlying principle always. You should invest as per your need. You should invest your money which you are likely to need in a predictable time frame in fixed income fund, which are not that risky. Okay. Your long-term money should be invested in equities or equity-linked vehicles. If you are a first-time investor, very conservative, invest in modest allocation funds. The funds which invest a small part of the money in equity, rest of it is anyway very safe. If you have till you have the experience, never invest in an all-equity fund till you have little bit of experience with those vehicles, because every investor in good time says that he can really withstand, he's aggressive investor, he can withstand the risk, he can take the decline in value in his stride. But when you are faced with your 1 lakh rupee becoming 90,000 rupee in 7 days, you are upset, and you are likely to get driven out of the market forever. So experience is important.
Right. Okay. So that was a good advice on how to invest, especially those of you who are young investors. Ramesh writes in, I'm a senior citizen falling in the 20% tax bracket. Should an SWP, which is a systematic withdrawal plan, from a liquid fund be a better option than a fixed deposit with monthly interest payouts? But also, how can I save taxes after exhausting the rupees 50,000 limit on interest received?
Very limited option in terms of saving taxes, because of course if you can actually invest 1.5 lakh rupees, that option is always there. If you are investing in maybe take more withdrawal and invest 1.5 lakh rupees in a ELSS fund, so that entitlement continues even for senior citizens. And SWP will always turn out to be more beneficial as compared to deriving interest income, simply because in SWP you are taking a good part of your money for consumption, which is your principal. That is not the gain.
But there has to be a strategy even for that, right? For the SWP?
No, for the SWP you have
depending on your need.
It depends on your need. If you invest 1 lakh of rupees, and that 1 lakh rupees, or assuming that you invest 10 lakh rupees and you are going to derive 80,000 rupees out of that every year. If you take that 80,000 rupees, the gain component in the 80,000 rupee withdrawal on a monthly basis over the next 12 months is going to be very insignificant. If that is going to be taxable, it is going to be far lower than the 10% tax, which will be 10% TDS, and maybe it will definitely be lower. And at 20%, it will be substantially lower, because 80,000 withdrawal, the gain component of that 80,000 will be very insignificant. Maybe 16,000 rupees will be the gain. So in that sense, it will be very tax efficient. It will be beneficial to do your SWP even from a liquid fund.
Okay. Sheshadri Nathan says, which category of debt fund is safe to invest for short term with zero exit load?
Most liquid funds come with zero exit load, and they are reasonably safe. And you can also consider some ultra short term bond fund. They are also reasonably safe, but not all of them are completely, exempt. Some of them have exit load for a period of 7 days or 15 days. So based on your needs, based on your, tentative time frame,
okay,
choose from these two, and these are reasonably safe.
Okay. Now again, what is the accrual fund? You have to explain to Shibaram.
Oh, this is again a jargon created by the people who create funds. But because every bond fund is an accrual fund, interest accrues on that, and that is factored in the NAV. So there is nothing special
Where's
about
the need to coin them like this?
Oh, investors like, or the creator of products, they think that if there is something new being communicated,
So,
have a USP. So, but every bond fund is an accrual fund, because any bond the fund invests in, the interest accrues on that, and they are able to, and even that interest, once it accrues, that also earns interest, because that also gets invested. Don't get carried by this. But of course, in the fund parlance, fund companies created high yield corporate bond fund, and these bonds are, and these funds invest in bonds which are yielding higher of relatively, of companies, and they go down the ladder in terms of credit rating. They invest in, mid-rated or lower-rated bonds,
okay,
for earning higher returns on them, and because that accrues, that money, or they're investing in bonds where they're cumulative in nature, so it reflects in the NAV. But at the same time, all these accrual funds, they have high exit load, because the fund manager expects the investors to come with a longer time frame in mind to derive the benefit of these high returns. So there's accrual fund for you. But principally, going by the expression, every bond fund is an accrual fund.
Okay, Gaurav Khanna says, do all FMPs have the same investment profile? How can we decide which one is better?
All FMPs will not have the same profile, because all FMPs are launched at different point of time, and the FMP portfolio entirely depends on when it was launched, the scale of it. Some FMPs which are, companies which are able to raise large amount of money in some FMPs, they are able to bargain or derive superior returns on some of the bonds that they will be investing in. So all bond funds, all FMPs are not alike, and it varies heavily or substantially on the company which is launching it and the time frame at which it is launched, because in debt, bond availability is a function of time.
Okay. Dhiren, thank you so much for answering the queries and throwing light on the fixed maturity plans. That's all we have in today's Investors Hangout. Till we meet next time, continue to invest regularly. Bye for now.